Austin Riley has a lofty production goal for 2026, and even if he doesn't hit it, the offense might still be okay. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, your daily source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. And you can find all my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're probably part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to fanduel.com to get started. A lot of Braves players had some really interesting comments about the ABS challenge system and their plans or how they're going to use it this year. And I want to get to that. But before we do that, we got some words from Austin Riley about his goals for the season and some of the work he's been doing to be better this year. I talked about Riley a little bit the other day, but I think the biggest takeaways here is, one, his goal for every season, really, 30 homers and 100 RBI. The exact quote he had was, quote, "If I don't hit 30 plus homers and drive in 90 to 100 runs, I kind of feel like it's a wash of a season. That's what they're paying me to do, and those are my goals. So I expect it every year. I expect it every year for how many years I have left on my contract." I do think what's great here about Austin Riley is, one, he is healthy. You'll remember he's had injuries the last couple seasons. He had an oblique strain early in 2024, and then he got hit by a pitch on the hand in August, fractured the hand, missed the rest of the year. Last year, he had that abdominal strain, happened before the All-Star break. He had a short IL stint. He came back, he re-injured it, went onto the IL, needed surgery, and did not come back. And Riley's saying all the right things, right? He is healthy. He feels good. He likes where he's at. Tim Hires was in Mississippi this winter, visited for a couple days to sit with Austin Riley, watch film, all that stuff. And we talked about that the other day. I'm not trying to rehash all of that. But what I think is really, is really big is I think the health has a massive role to play in Atlanta's 2026 season. Because, yes, a lot of these guys underperformed. And not all of that was injuries. Michael Harris was one of the 10 worst qualified hitters in baseball at the All-Star break, and he wasn't injured. He was just not good. Ozzie Albies at least had the excuse of the elbow or the recovery from the wrist injury he suffered in 2024 impacting his power in the first half. And we saw Harris get better after the All-Star break before he backslid into his old ways. We saw Ozzie get better and kind of stay better until he went down with the broken hamate bone in his hand. He's just a hipster and doing it before his time. But what I don't think people realize is exactly how many at-bats Atlanta gave to injury replacements that couldn't even provide replacement-level production, okay? So early in the year, obviously, you don't have Ronald Acuna Jr. in the outfield. And then Jurickson Profar gets popped and suspended the first week of the season, right? Atlanta gave a combination of 383 plate appearances. Gave a combined 383 plate appearances to the combination of Alex Verdugo, Jared Kelenic, Stuart Fairchild, and Brian De La Cruz. And none of those players hit anywhere near a major league level. Fairchild had the highest WRC plus at 68. He did it in only 55 at-bats. Verdugo had a 66 in 213 at-bats. 0 home runs for either one of those guys, by the way. Jared Kelenic had a 47 WRC plus in 65 at-bats. And Brian De La Cruz had a 27 WRC plus in 50 at-bats. Again, 383 plate appearances. They combined for 2 home runs, both from Kelenic, And that group also combined for 16 RBI. I know counting stats aren't the end-all be-all, but like, they weren't getting good defense from those guys. They weren't getting good offense from those guys. And so you look at the change you're going to make this season. Mike Yastrzemski's projected for a 108 WRC plus in a platoon role. Eli White, if you have to play him full-time, an 85 WRC plus. And then, Ronald, a 156 WRC plus. Jurickson Profar, a 112 WRC plus. And we talked yesterday in the second segment about how good Profar was in August. It's like a 180 something before he had that sports hernia and ended up playing hurt for the final month of the season. Assuming health holds out, and that's the big question here, right? Especially with this iteration of the Braves that can't seem to stay healthy. You're in a scenario where not only are you going to get a full season from well above average performers in Ronald and Jurickson Profar, but even if they were to miss time, the injury replacements you currently have on the opening day roster project to be better than them as well. It's a very similar situation. Look at shortstop. Nick Allen had 416 plate appearances last year. Not only did he have 0 home runs, he had 0 barrels. He hit 221, 284 with a 251 slug. Wow. It's a 53 WRC plus. Okay. Mauricio Dubon will be starting at shortstop early. He's projected for an 80 WRC plus. Remember, Nick Allen was a 53. And sometime in May, Ha-Seong Kim's projected to come back. That'll be a 95 WRC plus projection for him. Even if Dubon goes down for a little bit and they have to play Jorge Mateo, Mateo is projected for a 70 WRC plus. So you are already on the injury backup. And if you have to go to the backup's backup, he projects as of now to still be better than the starter you had last year. Catcher. Chadwick Tromp and Sandy Leone both took at-bats for the Braves behind Drake Baldwin when Sean Murphy was out. Tromp was early in the year. Leone was late in the year. Now you have Jonah Heim in camp. He's projected for a 75 WRC plus, and Baldwin's projected to improve to a 125, the third best mark on the... he had a 125 last year. He's projected for the same thing, a 124. He's projected to be one of the best hitters on the team this year. So you have a great everyday player, and then behind him, you've raised the floor. And that's kind of the story of this offseason, right? Like, Atlanta was not able to replace Marcell Ozuna. And Marcell Ozuna was not that good last year. He came out to a 114 WRC plus. He hit 230. He had a 400 slug, which is way below his career norms. There were several players who outslugged Marcell Ozuna, including Eli White and Michael Harris. Eli White had a higher slug than Marcell Ozuna last year. He even had a higher ISO slug, 168 for Ozuna, 172 for White. So, you didn't raise the ceiling, but you absolutely raised the floor. And Alex Anthopoulos talked about this on Friday when he met with the media. He said that the offense has been bad, and because the offense has been bad, it's put a lot of pressure on the rotation. But having a deeper lineup and hopefully having some of these guys who missed time because of injury or suspension in Profar's case, hopefully having them for the entire season should help the offense be deeper, which should take stress off of them as well. Quote, from a talent standpoint, this is the deepest group of position players that we've had. And so I think the pressure on all these guys to be their best is not as great. Now, the upside's there if they are, but we feel like 1 through 9, it's a really deep lineup, and even our bench, we feel it'll be a lot stronger as well. And especially when Sean Murphy and Kim come back, we're going to get that much stronger, and we're going to have some tough calls to make. And that's the big thing to me, is 1, 2023 is not coming back. That was an outlier year for everybody. But 24, 25, you have a bunch of injuries in 24, you have underperformance and injuries in 25. Means that the guys who are left in the lineup, whether it's Matt Olson, who's never feel like missed a day of baseball ever, whether it's Ronald trying to play through a calf injury, it's Profar trying to play through a sports hernia, all these different things, these guys are having to push so hard to produce because they represent an outsized portion of the offense. And now that you have so many more offensive options that can at least tread water for you, and many of them, again, are projected to be above average this season. You know, Atlanta finished last year with 6 guys who were over a 100 WRC plus, and several of them missed a good portion of the season. Riley had a 103. He played 102 games. Profar had a 122. He played 80 games. Ronald played 95 games. This year, you have 8 guys projected above a 100, with Ozzy right there at a 97 and Ha-Seong Kim at a 95. You have a lot of guys who are projected to be really close or better than average. And so even if you lose 1 or 2 of them, you still have 8 other options, and on any given night, you can have multiple guys in there carrying their own weight so that you don't need the stars to outperform their projections. Now, again, AA said the upside's there if they do, right? And you could easily see how if Riley outperforms his projection, if Olson hits for a little bit more power than his 30 home runs, if Ronald comes close to a 40-homer campaign, you can all of a sudden see how this offense could be one of the, 10 best in baseball or whatever you want to call it in 2026. But even if they don't, they project to be an above-average offense and hopefully better able to carry the load from a pitching staff that is currently depleted right now. Speaking of the pitching staff, we got some interesting comments from the catchers, and a couple of the hitters about what they plan to do with the automated balls and strike system. Let's talk about how that works, and then what the Braves said about it. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Encase Cards, custom card manufacturer. You upload your source photos. U-Sports is the obvious application, right? But there's tons of things you can do with this. I've seen everything from asking somebody to be your best man, like tons of options there. Family reunion photos, renewing your vows, whatever, right? You upload your source photo, their online card customizer. You choose the text, the holographic options, the background. You design the card exactly how you want it, and then you submit it for printing. They print it on high-quality cardstock, they slab it, they pop it in a plastic frame that doubles as a stand, and ship it directly to you. It's a great keepsake. It's great for kids. Your entire youth sports team, the coach can coordinate this for everybody, upload all their photos at once in bulk, do everybody with matching cards, all of that great stuff. Go to ncasecards.com, NCASCcards.com, promo code Braves Today for 20% off. Again, that's ncasecards, the letter N, casecards.com, promo code Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. And let's talk about the automated balls and strike system, because you're going to see that this year in the regular season. We saw it a little bit in spring training last year, but since at Northport, Atlanta spring training home was not a StatCast-enabled park last year, none of the home spring training games that were broadcast for the Braves used the ABS system. So let's explain what it is and how it works, and then what the Braves players said about how they're going to use it. So now that every spring training park is StatCast enabled, you will have this for the entire spring training slate, and this is the first year you will have it in the entire regular season with a few exceptions. When the Diamondbacks and Padres play in Mexico City in April, they won't have it. When the Twins and Phillies play in August for the Field of Dreams game, they won't have it. And when the Brewers and Braves play the Little League Classic in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, they won't have it. Outside of that, every regular season game will have the ABS challenge system, matching what the minors have had. So the StatCast system, the Hawkeye ball tracking stuff, you get 2 challenges a game to appeal a ball or strike call from a home plate umpire. So only the pitcher, the catcher, or the hitter can initiate the challenge. You have to do it virtually immediately. The rule of thumb is 2 seconds from when the call is made. The way that you do your challenge is tapping your helmet or your hat, right? Obviously, the pitcher's not wearing a helmet. You're tapping your hat, but you're tapping your head, and that is how you initiate the challenge. At that point, on the video board, they will show the Hawkeye, just like you see on StatCast. They'll show the ball flight, and they'll show where the pitch was. Did it touch the strike zone or not? These strike zones are all measured using the individual player measurements, right? So Ozzy's strike zone will be smaller than Aaron Judge's strike zone because of their height and all of that. If you get your challenge right, you retain the challenge. If you get it wrong, you lose the challenge. And again, each team gets 2 challenges per game. As long as you keep getting them right, you can keep challenging. And that's where the strategy is going to come in, is when do you challenge and who is allowed to challenge? And the Braves have some thoughts on that I'll get to in a minute. I do want to make sure I point out as well, when the game goes to extra innings, you will get a challenge for the 10th inning. And if you use that one, you will get a challenge for the 11th inning. So every subsequent inning, if you are out of challenges in extras, they will give you a new challenge, even if you got the last one wrong. You will be able to carry them over. But there are a couple little weird quirks about this, right? The first one is that the umpire can reject your challenge, okay? If the umpire determines that either A, you didn't do it in a timely manner, right? You took too long to decide you wanted to challenge it. Again, it's like 2 seconds. It's supposed to be virtually immediately. Or if the umpire determines that the player's decision to challenge was aided by somebody else, the dugout, a runner, another defender, or whatever, they can reject your challenge and say, no, you're not allowed to challenge this. If the dugout yells at you, challenge that, and you challenge it, the umpire can say no. We've seen that come up in the minors a little bit. One of the adjustments that MLB is going to make to prevent the dugout from assisting with challenges is they are not going to have the result of the pitch on the TV broadcast. The box will still be there. The square box that represents the strike zone, which, by the way, that's from the broadcast. That's not from MLB, so that's not the exact and official strike zone. It's very close, but just want to point that out. The box will still be there, but the dot that comes in, you would see a solid dot for a strike and a empty dot for a ball, like just an empty circle for a ball. That will not be on the broadcast. The box will be there, but the dot will not be there, because if you're in that weird situation of there being not very much lag into the dugout on the broadcast feed, they don't want them to be able to find a way to signal quickly a challenge needs to be done. It's a little overkill if you ask me, but I understand why they're doing it, okay? You're also not going to be able to challenge if a position player is pitching. It's a blowout at that point. We're saying no challenges. We're just going to move on. And if there's a replay review, you can't challenge a pitch after a replay review. Like if they look to see if the pitch hit a guy and they decide that the pitch did not hit him, but for some reason was called a strike, you can't then challenge that it was a ball. Like you can't, they're not going to do that. But here's the thing. In spring training last year, the average game saw about 57 extra seconds because of challenges. So it doesn't significantly prolong the game. And in AAA, there is no noticeable difference in the number of pitches per plate appearance. So this does not really impact the length of the game. This doesn't noticeably change how long the broadcast is, but this does give you the ability to correct the egregious errors. And I guarantee you, there's going to be teams, or probably the league actually, will keep stats as to the number of challenges failed and successful for players, right? Offense versus defense, catchers, pitchers, hitters, all that stuff. As well as I'm sure somebody, because the internet's the way they are, will keep track of the umpires that have the most calls overturned via challenge. And again, not every bad call is going to be overturned. There are situations you're not going to waste a challenge because the stakes are just not very big, right? It's an early, it's the second inning, it's the leadoff batter, it's a 1-1 pitch, or it's an 0-1 pitch, or it's a 1-0 pitch, or whatever. You're not going to challenge that. That's not a very impactful play. But in the ninth inning, bases loaded, 3-2 count, you absolutely want to have that challenge available, because if you get rung up on a pitch that was out of the zone and you can't challenge it, that could cost your team a win. Some of the Braves actually touched on that possibility. Let's get to their comments and what they said about this. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. If you are ton of information here, obviously, Winter Olympics is in there right now. NBA's, I think, in their second half. I don't really know. What's fun to look at for me, though, are the individual awards. Who's going to win the World Series, all that stuff. Dodgers are still the favorite to come out of the National League, clearly. Yankees are the favorite to come out of the American League, which just kind of feels like a vote in confidence in Aaron Judge and nobody else. Mariners are number 2. Blue Jays are 3. Red Sox are 4. I find it interesting. The Orioles are 5. The AL East projects to be just a juggernaut this year. But you look at some of the awards. Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt, Cal Raleigh, Gunnar Henderson, Julio Rodriguez for AL MVP. I don't think Gunner's going to do it. I don't know if J-Rod's going to do it. Cal Raleigh feels like he's due for regression. A lot of his home runs were close. National League, Shohei, Soto, Acuna at 3 plus 1,100, followed by Tatis and Lindor. Lindor's, dealing with that injury, going to miss a little bit of time early. So I wonder, will he come back with enough power to get himself in the MVP race? Feels a little doubtful. I've said this before, Rookie of the Year odds, there's no real Braves in there. Chris Sale is tied for 4th best odds for the National League Cy Young at plus 1,000. Schwellenbach was high on this list. He's clearly fallen off. Spencer Strider's at plus 2,500, though. So they have confidence in 2 Brave starters. Hurston Waldrop was at plus 10,000. That's clearly going to fall once they get the official diagnosis of him needing surgery or whatnot. But if you want to get started with FanDuel, go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. A lot of Braves players talked about the challenge system and how this is going to work. Credit to Chad Bishop of the AJC. He's the one that's been asking everybody in camp for their thoughts. Published this piece on Monday over on the AJC. The proclamation that got a lot of headlines over the weekend was Chris Sale saying, I will never challenge a pitch. I will never do it. And I kind of believe him, because Chris Sale also says, I'm not going to shake off my catcher. And last year, he didn't shake off his catcher once. Now, Chris Sale's explanation is very Chris Sale coded, right? Quote, I'm not an umpire. I'm a starting pitcher. I've never called balls and strikes in my life. Plus, I'm greedy. And I know that. I think they're all strikes. Every starting pitcher feels like that. A lot of the early reporting from different beat writers across the league and national media guys is that a lot of teams are probably not going to let their pitchers challenge calls, because a lot of pitchers, they think anything close is a strike. And there was a great quote in this piece from J.R. Ritchie, who's been using this in AAA. He had it the second half of the year in AAA. He's like, I think everything's a strike. Last year, I had Sandy, this is Sandy Leone, catch me a couple times. Sandy makes everything look like a strike. But at the same time, he's unbelievable at challenging pitches. I kind of let the catchers deal with that. One game, I threw a couple, and I'm like, that's got to be strike 3. Why are we not challenging that? We go back in, look at the iPad, it's like 2.5 balls off the plate. And so, like, there's J.R. Ritchie kind of telling you, like, hey, from the pitcher perspective, we're not the best arbiters of this. It really should be left up to the catchers to challenge over the pitchers. And Sean Murphy talked about this. He talked about the Braves actually have a strategy here. He said he tried it a little bit in AAA last year when he was rehabbing. He was catching Waldrop and Gwinnett. He's the one who suggested Waldrop throw the sinker, by the way. But Murphy said that, like, he didn't get any calls right. He did a little bit in spring training, too. Like, he didn't get any calls right, but Chadwick Tromp was much better at it because Tromp's been in AAA more, and he has more experience with it. There is a comfort factor that goes along with this. I do really wonder how effective Sean Murphy's going to be at it, given the fact that he's not going to play any spring games. So, will he be bad at challenging when he comes back and have to kind of work his way into being comfortable with the system? That's a really interesting thing for me to look. But Murphy talked about the team they have plans for how they want to attack the ABS system. Quote, I think every team is trying to figure out what the approach is going to be. I know it's one of the first things that we're going to address. We're going to go over it with the catching coaches, and we're going to go over it with the analytics team, what our strategy is going to be. I think there's going to be a skill to it, and I think being good at challenging pitches is going to be something we can control. I think we'll do our best to be as accurate as possible because flipping those close pitches is important. And I do think Sean Murphy's onto something here. I do think that at the end of the day, you're going to end up having players or having teams that have a specific strategy because they're looking to, kind of similar to framing, how when framing was a new thing, teams could get a significant improvement over other teams by being better at it. This is something new. There are going to be teams who put in the effort to be better at this. They're going to do better at stealing strikes and flipping close pitches than the teams that don't put a lot of thought into it and they just let the pitcher and the pitcher and the catcher run off of vibes. We call this the competitive balance life cycle, by the way, right? Somebody figures out something new, or in this case, something new is introduced. The teams that can quickly figure out how best to use that thing or how to tweak what they do to maximize the effectiveness of that thing will see an outsized benefit early. But over time, everybody's going to get better at this thing. So in a couple years, if you're the best at it, the difference between the best teams and the worst teams is a lot closer than it was when the thing started. That's kind of what we're going to be like with ABS challenges. There are going to be some teams who are very good and have very strict rules in place as to who can challenge in what situations. And if they did all their homework right, they're going to see a lot more benefit than the teams who just kind of run off of vibes and trust their veteran catcher to figure it out. But over time, everybody's going to get pretty decent at this. That's how these things work. Framing's the same way. You don't see anybody who comes out horribly as a framer now because those guys aren't in baseball anymore. Everybody is at least pretty decent at framing. The worst framer in baseball is on par with some of the best framers from when they first figured out that framing was a skill. Because it's just something you have to be good at now. Eventually, catchers understanding what is a challengeable pitch that we can win is just going to be a thing they're all going to figure out. The question is, how long will it take? The batter side of this is the kind of more intriguing part to me because that's really going to be down to situational stuff. That's where the situation matters. Ozzie Albies had a great quote about this, by the way, talking to Chad Bishop at the AJC again. Quote, I heard because I'm a short guy, it's going to help me with the pitches on top. I'm excited about that part for sure. Again, the strike zone is set vertically different for every hitter. And Ozzie Albies being 5'7", him, Jose Altuve, a lot of the other short kings in the game, they frequently lose pitches up in the zone, get called strikes because the last batter, who was normal height for MLB, that was a strike and the umpires are human and they sometimes make mistakes. The umpires may not adjust the strike zone down enough as compared to where it should be when you go from a 6-1 hitter to a 5-7 or something like that. So Ozzy's hyped about it. And he said specifically, he's the one that pointed out those situations. Quote, I think it's definitely great because sometimes you're in a situation, let's say bases loaded, 2 outs, game on the line to win it, and you get called by a pitch way out of the zone. You challenge it and win the game. Winning's everything at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how it happens. I think it's going to be, in certain situations, great. And that's kind of how I feel. Catchers will have more latitude to make these calls based on them seeing the pitch well. Batters are going to, for the most part, unless you're just amazing with strike zone discipline, batters are going to be told to save the challenge for a crucial situation, right? Bases loaded, 3-2 count, you're down by a run in the 9th, and the ball off the plate is called a strike. The hitter's going to be told to challenge it then. I'm sure some hitters will challenge a call or challenge a pitch at that point, even if maybe it wasn't off the plate, seeing if they can get a call anyway. But that's kind of how I see this going, but I'm curious to see how it unfolds. Let me know if you have different thoughts. Like, am I overthinking the challenges? Is there something that I'm not thinking about that you think hitters are going to do or pitchers are going to do or catchers are going to do a lot? Do you think we'll see a change in approach? More pitchers throwing to the edges of the zone to try to get borderline calls and get teams to pop their challenges early? I'm really curious about some of the other thoughts. Let me know. I'm on social media at Crosby Baseball. But that'll do it for Braves Today for Monday, February 16th. Do me a favor. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And then over at bravestoday.com, we're putting out the Northport Report every evening with the recap of that day at spring training, as well as the daily deep dives on Monday. Your subscriptions over there, free and paid, help us out a ton. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.